Welcome to episode 121 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And when I heard that the Green Goblin was taking on the Batman, this is not the movie I was expecting.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast. And, this movie, it reminded me of a dream I had. And, yes, I have a dream. It's not some MLK dream for equality. I want to own a decommissioned lighthouse, and I want to live at the top, and nobody knows I live there. And there's a button that I can press and launch that lighthouse into space.
So our guest today, Brandon Boone. Brandon, welcome to the show, man.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Again.
So
before everyone gets upset, of course, that was from The Office, and Stanley says it.
I have this ongoing war with Don with The Office. I don't really mind The Office. I just don't want to make Don happy. So.
Oh, Don,
in the words of Jay-Z, what I eat don't make you shit.
Somehow that line ties in really well with this whole film we're going to talk about. I don't know how you did that.
I'm two for two.
You took 1 week off of the show and you are on fire now, man. Jeez.
Oh.
It's amazing. The last time somebody took the week off, Brandon was on the show and I didn't get to talk to him. So there you go. It's all come full circle. It's crazy.
Now we finally get rid of Gemma, so we're all set.
Poor Gemma. But no, man, why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
I'm Brandon Boone. I'm a media composer. I write music for podcasts, film, and video games, that kind of thing. You probably heard me on the No Sleep podcast or the video game Scarlet Hollow. And I like talking about movies.
Awesome. So when you started with No Sleep, how did that, whatever you're allowed to talk about, how do you get involved with No Sleep is my question.
Oh, I can't say a word. It's all very strict and confidential. I was a fan. I was a fan of the show back when it first started. And I was just a listener for the first 2 seasons. And then around season 3, I think it was before it even started, David had sent out a message along with the podcast saying that the amount of work the show was kind of getting to him a little bit. And so I emailed him and said, hey, I write a little bit of music, and I sent him kind of a demo reel, and he started letting me do one story here and there. And then I think by season 5, I was doing all of the music.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
As a fan, and now here we are.
I knew you weren't there at the very beginning, but I didn't realize you started as a fan. I kind of love that. That's really neat.
Right, yeah. The beginning when the music was much better, as a lot of people will say.
Well, I disagree. They're wrong. No.
It's a whole ongoing thing.
No, that's great. So let me ask you this. Why did you pick The Lighthouse today?
I picked The Lighthouse because when I watch a movie, a lot of the times it's kind of it's heavily influenced by who wrote the music, and I'm a big fan of Mark Corvin. Is that how you say his name, Mark Corvin?
I'm not sure, but sure, we'll say it's right.
Mark Corvin. Yeah. I was like, is there is it Coven or Corvin? Yeah, Mark Corvin. But yeah, he of course did The Witch, which was one of the first movies I saw that really kind of took me back with how the music was used. And when I watched The Lighthouse, obviously the acting in it is incredible, and I love everything about this movie, but the music and the way sound is used is really upsetting, I think. Is the right word for it. It's just really unsettling and makes you uncomfortable, and I really like that.
Yeah, I think unsettling is the perfect word for it. I mean, even the other sounds as well, even the way the ocean crashes just feels a little off compared to what I'm used to, and I'm no expert with that stuff, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but it was definitely something I noticed, so that tells me something's going on there.
a lot of it works together in that same way where even the seagulls are really loud. A lot of the sound is really loud, and the way the music, a lot of it sounds, it's like horns, just horns blowing and stuff. And it's that strong sea feeling, and it's so abrasive, and it really makes you feel I think it's meant to make you feel as uncomfortable as these two people feel.
And that's one thing I really, really liked about this film was the way it's shot as well. I was reading about how, because I don't understand this stuff, but I was reading about how Eggers purposely used a 1.19 to 1 ratio just because it feels more cramped on the screen than we're used to seeing.
Really?
And and so he went back to, it's basically the ratio that was used with the first Speaking movies. And he went back to that just because it felt more cramped and it's more like the actors don't have as much room on the screen.
Wow.
And so it conveys that as well. But here's what I find fascinating about it, and this goes to the music and sound as well. He still gets these shots outside that feel super imposing. Like
Right.
the ocean crashing, or like just the lighthouse and how big it is compared to where I guess we'll call him Ephraim for now, is in relation to it, or different things like that. And I thought it was really cool how he could take this cramped, smaller than we're used to a shot and still give us these superimposing things. And then, like you said, that plays into the sound and music as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what? If you're shooting it like that, it's not just the way it appears on the film, but or at least on screen. There's also the idea that those men have to be closer to each other when they're performing,
Right.
which is definitely going to add to the discomfort. You know, there is no room, especially during that one chase scene where, you know, if one's in the screen, the other one is just a little bit off screen. You don't get to see this wide shot where, you know, Robert Pattinson is across the room from Willem Dafoe or vice versa. So it always feels as though, especially during that part, it feels as though Willem Dafoe is right on his heels. And then in the reverse, when you see Robert Pattinson following behind him, or even during the dog leash scene.
Right. I guess one thing I would bring up, and another reason why I chose this movie, is I'm a big fan of like movies like Phantom Thread, or any movie where, like, Daniel Day-Lewis is an incredible actor, and anytime there's a movie where it's like, here's 2 hours, look at how good these actors are at acting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this movie also appealed to me. So I think just starting from the point of how incredible these two are in this movie, I think I think with the close quarters stuff and just driving each other insane, I don't know who else could have played these parts, especially Willem Dafoe. I think it's just, it feels so real when you watch it.
he's fantastic in this. I mean, they both are, but he's just phenomenal.
He does this thing where he stops looking at Thomas, or he stops looking at Ephraim, and he starts looking off to like the side, like while he's talking. Like, he's not even really paying attention to who he's talking to anymore. He's just talking, and it's, I don't know, it's so captivating to me.
I was reading about how he basically loved The Witch, and he got a hold of Eggers and was like, I want to do whatever you're working on next. And I'm like, man, that is something that paid off really well for someone. That's not usually how that story goes.
Right.
But really, like, what a great choice for that character. And then just kind of feeling like that's almost like so serendipitous that he would beg to be in the next thing. And then it's this thing that I would argue is one of his greatest performances ever.
I think so. This and probably Green Goblin.
I'm something of an actor myself.
I do love him as Green Goblin. I don't know why I said that. It's not like the difference between the two is so huge.
It is, and yet he's so good at both. Yeah,
he is.
Well, here's the thing: Willem Dafoe's pretty much good in everything that he's done. Even some of the goofier roles. And I'm glad that you made a comparison between him and Daniel Day-Lewis. Now, I'm not saying that Willem Dafoe does the whole, fully immersing himself into the character and doing method acting, but it seems as though he becomes that person whenever he's on screen. Yeah. Whereas I didn't, we've made the jokes about Green Goblin and things like that, but I did not see Green Goblin. I did not see Elias from Platoon. I didn't see any other character that he's ever played. because he was doing this so well to where, I was, laughing at the beginning where I was kind of like, oh my God, that's such a ridiculous, like, sea captain accent that he has. And then by the end of it, I'm like, I don't fucking remember how Willem Dafoe actually talks, because he was doing it so well. And it was just not a thing of, even when Thomas makes that comment to him, like, oh, even the way you talk, it's like a parody. It's like a parody. It's ridiculous. Making fun of the way he was speaking. And that was honestly, as an audience member, that's probably how you feel at the beginning. And now that this character has done it, you almost feel like, no, fuck you. He's doing an awesome job. He's doing an awesome job. I love the way he's doing this.
Absolutely.
It's like, I hate you.
I want to see you get into it with Robert Pattinson now. That'd be great.
Well, I mean, I was in House Slytherin. He was in Hufflepuff. So
I read a bit about the accents as well and how both are, accurate for the time. But Roberts is more of a like Maine farmer kind of dialect at the time. Mm-hmm. And then obviously Willem Dafoe's characters is more of the sea captain life, kind of the nautical way of life speak. So yeah, I thought it was really cool, because a lot of times you see like, oh, let's go back to how they spoke during this era, but everybody kind of speaks the same way. And and this was nice because you get, these people aren't from the same area. They wouldn't speak the same way. And I thought that was a really nice addition that I don't see a lot.
It's something, and we talk about what this reminds us of. When I was probably about 20 minutes into it, after a discussion on a previous show, when we were discussing another film, we talked about the whole idea of Gothic horror and things like that. And I just got a weird Edgar Allan Poe feeling about this film. So I just looked up some stuff on it. Apparently, originally it was supposed to be based off of one of his stories. So, it's really cool to see how you still have those elements that are there, even though they went, I guess, a different adaptation with the script as they continue to develop it.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And it's weird to me because I got vibes of the Raven from it whenever he would deal with the seagull.
Yeah.
But I didn't make any larger Poe connections there. So I just find that fascinating.
I guess it just felt to me. So before I started writing music and everything, I used to work for my dad in a machine shop company. And there's this whole kind of blue collar thing about this movie, and the whole kind of like the guy who's been doing it for a long time, belittling, I guess is the word I would use, the new guy, like, making him do all this terrible shit to like get used to the job and all that kind of stuff. And it kind of, not that I went through anything like that necessarily, but I've seen that, and it feels very accurate to me.
Oh yeah.
And just that constant tension of him just kind of beating him down, until obviously he stands up for himself at points, but it's pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that even with like some jobs I've had were kind of that way, where the new guy gets all the grunt work and that kind of thing. And but I see it a lot. Like I would hear about it a lot from my dad. My dad worked at the railroad for like 30 years, and he would talk about that, and he would say like it's not so much that way anymore, but like when I was starting out, blah 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 blah, and that does really ring true. And I didn't even make that connection of how universal that kind of is even today to a degree.
Well, no, I wouldn't even say to a degree. I would say it's spot on. It's a universal thing that's gone on beyond the generation that's being filmed or portrayed here, because it doesn't matter what occupation you're in. There's always that moment where you might not be the one who's getting crapped on, right? But your generation might be the one. Yeah, this could be. Yeah, that was such a shitty day for him. But it might be your generation or your period of hires that might get, the label of like, oh, you guys are wearing helmets now. When we worked in the mines, we didn't wear helmets. We didn't have to do that. You guys are too soft now. And you see how Ephraim fights back with Thomas several times where, he's like, oh, this place isn't clean. And Ephraim responds like, I cleaned this place like several times. Like there's only, and I can only get it so clean. The butlers of the queen and or the royal family couldn't do this. And you see how there is that moment where he asserts himself in this situation, which if you are the new guy, and it's just the two of you. So it's not as though you can go to HR or you can go somewhere else and complain and say, hey, I'm doing my job, switch me somewhere else. Because Thomas has so much power over Ephraim in every aspect where he's kind of like, oh, if you talk to me like this, I'm going to put it in the report and then we're going to dock your pay. But he's understanding the pressure that this guy is under, where he had already come over from the field of lumber, right, or forestry, and this is like another shot for him. So if he doesn't do this right, or he gets a complaint or something marked up in his file, this is the day and age where your reputation is definitely going to follow you into this other place because of someone in power said this about your work ethic, or someone in power wrote this in the ledger or your work history. And it's going to be really hard for you to go in and get a job somewhere else without, assuming a new identity.
And then he even takes it to the extent where he will hit him. Like he smacks him across the face and stuff. And it's, Ephraim's not allowed to fight back or else he gets, written up.
It's such an examination of power and insecurity. Like whether it's on the job or just in this film, like it's that feeling like, oh, is the new wave going to replace my way? So like you try to keep them down and you try to be the powerful one, but it's really that insecurity of wondering, do I still matter? And I think that, and I think Willem really hits both of those so well. Like it's so ingrained in the character that he's portraying, and it's not just the writing, it's everything he does. And it's so palpable, as I fuck up that word. I'm going to leave it. I'm not even going to edit that out. Fuck everybody. But no, it's so ingrained and so great. And I think that it just shines that light on exactly that feeling. Like when I do see it in the workplace, it's usually like you're using computer programs I don't understand. You're doing these things that I used to do the hard way. Like, what do they need me for anymore? And becoming paranoid, you'll be replaced. Yeah.
That's 100% what it is. He's training essentially, not necessarily one for one his replacement, but like the next generation of a lighthouse keeper. So he's feeling more and more insignificant as the time goes on.
Yeah, and if I don't teach you to use it, you still need me.
Right.
I do think it's fascinating. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, I think that it's just fascinating that he's so threatened by Ephraim, even though that guy's supposed to be leaving soon. It's not like you're here for the next 5 years with me. It's what, like 4 weeks or something?
4 weeks.
Yeah.
But then you think, so is he fucking with Ephraim the entire time? Like when they go to get to the ship and he's like, you missed the ship weeks ago. Like they were just talking about how they just missed the ship. And he's like, no, you missed the ship weeks ago. It's like I don't know if he's intentionally trying to drive Ephraim mad, or if Thomas is already so insane that it just comes off that way.
I mean, that delves into many different theories going on with this film. And
that's a good place to start, I guess. I was like, what do you think happened here?
Don, would you like to go first?
Here's what I'm going to say. And this is something that I made sure to write down because I thought it was a good quote. When Thomas gives a speech similar to Quinn from Jaws, where he's just talking about, this is what life is like. And, it wasn't this that's problematic. It's the doldrums. And he goes on and keeps talking. He says, boredom makes men villains. And at that point, I'm watching both of them because I'm thinking, one, Thomas is going to start fucking with him because one, he's this old lighthouse keeper. He already seems a little sketchy. He's got these ways about him. This is a new young guy who's on the job. He's being talked to. He's being talked down to. So I'm thinking like, well, what's going to happen? And I'm glad, Brandon, that you brought up the ship part, or at least the relief part, because then that made me question, well, what the fuck happened to the other guy who was there before? And I'm sitting there with my wife. I'm like, I guarantee you he killed the other guy. Said he didn't just die and this is his replacement. He killed the other guy because he just drove him crazy. And, he got bored. So, he killed a guy.
Right.
It's kind of like the old Johnny Cash song, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die.
I could see
something
that.
to do.
What about you, Brandon? What do you think's happening here?
I do think he killed the previous lighthouse keeper, and I think that I kind of took it as I kept trying to. I found myself overthinking a lot of things, and I kind of started to take it as it was. And I do think that Thomas is insane. I think there are. You get bits of him kind of catching his own like downward spiral, but by the end of it, he's so far gone, and I still don't know what to make of the mermaid stuff. I've been trying to figure that part out, but I do think it is the case of Thomas killed the previous lighthouse keeper, and then he was killed by Ephraim, and then Ephraim is. I don't know exactly how Ephraim dies, I guess, but yeah, I mean, in the end, everyone's dead, right? So I guess I just took it that way.
So my theory is crazier, and and that's why I wanted you guys to go first, because if either of you hit it, I would feel better about myself. But no. All right. So I believe, and this is all conjecture, but I think they're the same person. I don't think they both exist. And
okay.
and I think that Robert is Willem when he's younger. And like that's still how he kind of sees himself. He sees like this young kid who like threw away his life and he's been living on this rock. And if you follow Willem's story of like his marriage and stuff like that, right? Like he talks about how I missed this many Christmases, so she left, right? So like if he sees Robert as his younger self, he sees the fuck up kid who needs to do things right instead. But then he's also an old, jaded, knows he can't fix anything type, right? So then he's just mad at him instead because he can't change anything. And so it's why I think that Ephraim has a fake name for half the film, because until he's really drunk, he can't admit that they're both Thomas. And when you guys talk about the ex-coworker that Ephraim killed, I think that was the wiki. That's the assistant. And I think that Thomas lost his shit on this island, killed his assistant, and I haven't figured out how that pours into the seagulls, but I think there's something there about killing somebody and that guilt and how the seagulls are part of that.
The souls of the sailors. He says the seagulls are the souls of the sailors.
Yeah,
so maybe he thinks that it's the wiki coming back to avenge his wrongful death. Yeah. I do like that. I do think that it makes total sense that they are both. I mean, why else? If you got two people in a movie, why would you have them have the same name for one? Like it's already. I think that's what they've been hinting at, and I think you have a good point.
And James, this is why I hate you.
Because now you got to watch it again.
No. Because there was a point where I wrote down, because I'm looking at it right now, where I wrote down these guys better not be one fucking person, and then I wrote right next to it high tension. Because it was when he was chasing him with the axe. I'm like, I said, if this turns into high tension, I'm going to be very pissed. But I never saw like this moment where it's like, there's this big reveal, like, oh yes, we're definitely the same person. Ha ha ha.
Right. The camera zooms in on Robert Pattinson's face and zooms out, and it's Willem Dafoe or something like that.
Right.
There's never like a solid reveal that it's the same person.
Well, and that is one thing I'm totally okay with. I don't want there to be.
Right.
Because I feel like if that was the situation, it's not like you'd ever reveal that to yourself. Oh my God, we're the same person. Like that doesn't feel real to me. But when you have Thomas dying out on the island, and then you have Robert climbing the stairs and trying to fucking get to this light, but he doesn't really make it, right? Like, I think that's all very symbolic of the same thing. It's like you can't get to salvation. Like, if the light is salvation, this is a literal fall from grace. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe I'm English majoring it.
Yeah,
but
I was going to say, you damn English majors always pull that one.
But yeah, that's where I'm at.
I do wonder.
That's my weirdness.
because I mean, I think the only thing that threw me off with that whole idea is they show Ephraim arrive, and there's like other people around helping him unload and stuff like that. So I think because of that, I kind of washed that whole "are these the same guy" away.
I could see
I feel
that.
like if the movie just started and it was just Ephraim like approaching the lighthouse by himself, I think maybe that would have been a dead giveaway because there's no other witnesses at all. But I don't know, maybe that's what threw me off.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think the movie wants us to not have answers, so I'm good either way. Sure. But no, let's talk about this mermaid. What were your thoughts on the mermaid?
For me, I just thought it was like manifest of loneliness. Like that's all it was to me. It just it was just the insanity of being lonely and being they don't have women here, so obviously he's gonna conjure up this idea of a mermaid with that little toy.
I thought it was interesting that we see the mermaid more than once and in different ways, right? So you see the mermaid where she's in the water, or the siren when she's in the water, and then you see her again when she's on the rocks, covered in kelp and seaweed, and Robert Pattinson's character Ephraim, kind of clears her off. But then you see this other moment where he's masturbating, holding the little sculpture of the mermaid and thinking of what he had already imagined in his head. So it made me think about, well, for disclosure, for anybody who hasn't listened, if I've mentioned this on the show before or not, one of my secondary areas in history is gender and sexuality, right? And what I do from 19th and 20th century gender and sexuality globally. It's discussing and it's analyzing some of these issues that come up. And one of those things that goes on is the, male sexual behavior, underground economy, sex work, things like that. And even when it comes to how people utilize certain things, right? And I mean, as far as like pictures or, like the Little Mermaid sculpture or, when we were growing up and before our generation, for that matter, you had the National Geographic magazines to where sex itself wasn't taught in a way that was healthy or helpful. Because even, in his fantasy, like he's the dominant one, like he has this right to have, kind of like we talked about when we were doing The Shining, this idea that Jack Nicholson's character felt entitled to the woman's body in his fantasy. Like that was what was driving him, it was making him, I guess, a man or whatever he would try and excuse it as. But when it comes to this mermaid, it's interesting that we always have the mermaids sexually pleasing according to what our beauty standards are, when in reality, you don't know if mermaids would have looked like that. I mean, there's some historical records that show that sailors that came to the New World mistook manatees for mermaids, which that gets into a whole new use of Rule 34. Just imagine Columbus trying to sweet talk a manatee.
You got to do what you got to do, I guess. I did think one other thing about the mermaid outside of just the fantasizing. It felt to me there's that scene where I think like the rocks are kind of parting as the mermaid first like swims up to him, and I kind of felt like that was the point at which by having sex with a mermaid in this fantasy, it felt like he was kind of giving in to the madness. And I don't know if that was the point where, Ephraim becomes Thomas or what we're going with that theory. But it did feel like the symbol of madness was the mermaid for me. And it kind of ties into the whole, it comes from the sea. Then you have the tentacles and the Lovecraftian thing later. But it kind of felt like the sea, represents isolation and madness. So it felt like, the mermaid coming from the sea is what took him to that place.
Okay.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Maybe that's why his wife left and it wasn't Christmas after all. You did what?
He was opening a different present.
Oh man. So my main thing with the mermaid is just I think it's odd that Like, if it was a real mermaid and it swam up and he had sex with it, I would get it. Like, you're alone, there's no women. It's the fact that he's fantasizing over it. That's what blew me away. I was like, you don't like start by fantasizing like normal women that you just saw recently, you know?
Right.
Unless he hasn't seen a woman recently.
He's been on the
rock
run
the whole time.
So. Ooh. Well, you've twisted this enough that I'll believe you.
It was your
even then, there would still be somebody in his mind.
I'm still building this. Yeah, there should be, but maybe not. Did either of you happen to read about when Eggers was researching the mermaid's vagina and how it built in?
No. Let me open an incognito window real quick, and I'll see what I can find.
But no, they literally just started researching shark genitalia. And that's what it's modeled after. And I thought that was a very
interesting.
I mean, it makes sense, but I was also like, I don't know that would occur to me.
No, of all the sea creatures to choose, they chose a shark. That must mean something.
Yeah. But no, the creativity behind it is what gets to me, because like there's all this stuff that I started reading as I was researching that about how the depiction of mermaids changed over time. So like sometimes you get the split fin, and the split fin is supposed to be more psychologically appealing to men. It's like splitting legs, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
And then they went to the one tail to kind of diminish that and make it less sexual, basically.
Yeah, right.
And I've never put any thought into any of this. So just reading that was interesting to me. That's why I wanted to know if either of you had read anything, but that's where we are.
I typically don't do a lot of like outside research when I watch a movie like this. I just kind of dive in and I just kind of take it for what it is. But man, maybe I should start doing that research. That's interesting.
It can ruin movies for you. Don't do it.
That's what I'm afraid of. That's my fear.
Like I read a part where they like mentioned that this one seagull is definitely a puppet, not a seagull. And when I watched it, that's all I could see was the puppet instead.
Was it the one in the sister?
Yeah, the one that jumps out and slams him in the face, basically. Yeah. So then, but then watching it, like I literally just saw a puppet instead. Like it immediately pulled me out. So I'm just saying, don't do it. Just leave it to me. It'll be fine.
Say that. I'll let you ruin it.
I just pulled the Simpsons line on it, which was stop. He's already dead.
He does beat the living shit out of that bird, doesn't he?
And it looks super real. Like when he slams it and the blood splatters out.
Oh yeah, the splatters were awesome.
Yeah, it felt very real. I was gonna say, so one thing that kind of twisted me up was just the scenes where Willem Dafoe is at the light itself. Like when he's up with the light, like what do you make of all that? Like you said, salvation earlier.
Yeah, I mean, he makes a comment about that being salvation. So that was my only reason. Outside of that, I don't know what the hell to make of it. So Don, what do you got?
Here's the thing. At the end of the movie, all I could think of was the briefcase from Pulp Fiction, which
nice.
Again, it's been debated for years. What's in it? I mean, what's inside the briefcase is supposed to symbolize, right? Is it supposed to be Marcellus Wallace's soul? Is it supposed to be the diamonds from the Reservoir Dogs film or the heist? Is it just a flashlight? But I think it's kind of like the same. I wouldn't necessarily say salvation, his literal salvation. Possibly it's something that it's a way to make things right. But, because the lighthouse is there to save people or prevent people from running aground. So maybe he just did so many shitty things like, I'm here, this is my penance, this is what I need to do, and it's my duty, which, there's so many times when Robert Pattinson's character Ephraim asks, Willem Dafoe, Thomas, I want to use the light, I want to do the light, and he's like, no, it's mine. And you see how he sees it as his responsibility, and it's kind of a balance between responsibility and burden, but then also this idea of he doesn't want anybody to take that away from him because it's not theirs to take from him. He hasn't given up that right. He hasn't given up that duty yet.
I do. I like,
but it's also his purpose, though.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of times that all of us, for that matter, we get so stuck into whatever we're doing, right? That becomes part of our identity. And if we can't do that, and this is like, if you worked at a job for a while or something was in your family forever, like, and now it's taken away, it's become so much of your identity that once it's gone, you start to think like, well, what the fuck am I without that? In a horrible comparison I will make right now with no apologies, is that's what some people see when they're too tied into a relationship. And what I mean, as far as like their relationship is all that they have, as far as everything about their life revolves around their partner. And the partner leaves them or dies or, whatever, they fall in love with somebody else. And the person who's left behind, they kind of question, like, what is their life supposed to be now? Because their life before was this person that they were with for X amount of years, maybe their entire life. And now they don't know what to do without that person. I think that's kind of what you would have with Willem Dafoe. Like he's charged with this duty, and the idea that this is what he's supposed to be doing to have some measure of normalcy of a life or duty or purpose or whatever. If it gets taken away from him just one bit, that redefines who he is, and he has to search for that again.
I totally get that. Yeah. I do want to make a note. So I have it playing on my iPad next to me, like muted and everything, just going as I'm seeing if I catch anything. I did notice. So I feel like I do want to watch it again with the whole "they are the same person" thing for sure. Go like watch it with that in mind. There's little things I see throughout now. Like there's a point where there's a mirror by Ephraim's bed, but you only ever see in one scene. You only ever see Thomas's reflection in it. Stuff like that makes me wonder how much of that's intentional. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I don't know if it's only, but in this scene where you can see this mirror, it's clearly on his side of the room. It's Ephraim's mirror. But when Willem Dafoe sits down, it's very intentional. In the shot, you see his face in Ephraim's mirror.
Well, we should just start doing this show differently. We'll do watch-alongs instead and talk about it as it happens. It'll just...
I pulled it up to see because I was curious about something in the beginning, and I pulled it up and I haven't turned it off. I was thinking, was he alone in the beginning, or were there people with him? I thought there were people. As you can tell, I take diligent notes while I watch these movies.
No one said you had to. Have you seen other things that are tying into this as well while we're on this subject? Or just the mirror so far?
Just the mirror. So I haven't really been watching intently. It's just kind of there. But I did notice that.
Cool. Don, what do you got in your notes?
I had, these ideas about masculinity. So it changes depending on what we're looking at, whether we're talking about Ephraim/Thomas being the same person as Thomas, or Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe's character being the same person, or if they're separate people. But it still hits on those same things of what is masculinity supposed to be, and that came up to me. It came up a few times where it was, having this type of job, working with your hands and all the different ways that Thomas's character, Willem Dafoe, kind of starts not necessarily berating, but kind of letting him know, like, this is how you do a good job. But basically he's letting him know, like, this is the type of job that determines who you are as a man.
Right.
And you see how he kind of challenges it, but then you also see how Pattinson's character is receptive to that, in the sense of, like, I'm going to listen to you so I can actually do what I need to do, not just survive while I'm out here, but do what I need to do in order to get to the next step or get to the next area, or just the idea of being in charge or emasculating somebody like Pattinson does at the end with Dafoe, where he puts him on the leash and walks him outside.
Absolutely.
But what did the two of you see or think about when it came to terms, or it came to the idea or the topic of masculinity, manhood, any of that stuff?
I think you're spot on. It kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier with like, being in a line of work and the kind of the veterans who work there looking down on the new people and doing anything that is different than the old way. They'll say you're too soft, or, and I think it's that constant berating, and it's in a way that, you're not a man unless you do it this terrible way.
Yeah, and you're also not a man if you don't have the same challenges I had.
Right.
You did it the easy way. Your hands aren't calloused over or whatever, you know? Yeah, I think everything in this is about masculinity and toxic masculinity and insecurity as a man. Like, I think masculinity is the top theme in this entire thing. We're literally on an island with a penis-shaped building. So, I mean...
That's true.
So,
and it's not even going into space.
It's
like
not.
Other penis-shaped objects.
And this movie lasts longer than 8 minutes. All right. So, but
wow.
Yeah, I do. I think everything about this is about masculinity. So yeah.
That's how it feels to me. It's like that it's that really toxic, you're not going to be as strong as I am. You're not going to be a good lighthouse keeper as I am. You'll never achieve what I've become. Look at what I am. And it's like, when you look at his character, he's this old broken man.
But you'll never be as cool as me.
Exactly.
If you look at American society, and I wouldn't even say 2021, right? But if you look at the way that we romanticize things like the 1950s or the 1980s, there's always this look back of, this is what it was like to be a man. Or you have people saying, I would love to go back to that period because, people respect it. It always comes down to this point, this part about men being in charge. It's never a thing about men, being in touch with their feelings or going to therapy, which I hate to break it to anybody out there. Therapy is not a bad thing. It's not a bad word. And a lot of people would have benefited from going to therapy in the 1950s and 60s. And for that matter, for the 1980s as well. But you see how that comes up where I was just watching this film, this documentary. It was about the gay conversion therapy churches or parts of those churches. And they had that same idea of, in order to take the femininity and the homosexuality out of these men, we need to retrain your brain or retrain you or re-gear you. We need to get you doing masculine things. And if you happen to be a woman who has gay feelings, we're going to make you have feminine exercises or do things to make you more feminine, putting on makeup and nail polish and dresses and things like that, because that's what's going to make you feminine. And with the men, it was, we're going to teach you how to be men by playing sports and things like that. And, my wife was joking, was sitting there watching with me, and I joked with her. I said, yeah, nothing's more heteronormative than a bunch of guys playing football, tackling each other to the ground and holding on to each other. Nothing is more straight than that, especially when they start wearing the tight pants and smacking each other on the butts. And, she started like, I was like, this makes no sense, because you have these rules of what it's like or what it's supposed to be if you're feminine or masculine, right? But then you see how the way that it's approached, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Oh, you need to go in the army and become a man. Like, but I'm going to be in a room with a bunch of other guys and we're going to be showering together. That's what's going to make you a man. Like, okay.
You're only a man when you're dominating another man in as physical a sense as possible, with as tight as clothing as possible. Even
then, if you talk about if we were to go even deeper than this, because I thought it was going to go this route with the film, because there's that moment where Ephraim makes that comment about like, oh, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me drunk. And I think he said something like, take advantage of me, or he said something to that extent. And I was thinking like, oh shit, we're getting into the paranoia that men have about being around another man and having those feelings, right? But they didn't go, 100. I wouldn't even say they went 20% there.
They do almost kiss in the movie. Yeah. They almost kiss.
But it's not even taught. It's not even said as far as this idea of romantically, homosexually, anything like that. As far as questioning orientation, it was kind of like, oh, here's a little tension and let's draw back a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas even when it comes to same-sex intercourse in prisons, or even in other institutions, right? Other male-centric institutions, they'll make this argument that says, well, the guy who was giving isn't gay, the one who was receiving is. So even then, you're talking about that dominance of man over another man, and to make this argument of one is more masculine than the other, so it's okay. You know, we'll look the other way. You know, that was in prison. You had to do what you had to do. I understand it. It's okay because you were actually, quote unquote, the man in the relationship. So, I mean, there's so much going on in this film that relates to, I mean, it is an American society reflection, but there's so much that goes on that you can look at in any generation of American society and see that it goes beyond just this little island that the lighthouse is on.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything too gay going on in this film. They're just watching each other jerk off. It's fine. So a lot. and I don't have a problem with that. I'm kind of making fun of it, but it's more like it's about this toxic masculinity thought, right? Like, oh, I'm not gay, you're gay, you know, this whole nonsense thing. But like, would it matter? Maybe these two could live happily ever after if they're different people. And who knows, you know? I don't know.
It did feel that way. Whenever they started drinking, you're like, these guys are going to fight or fuck. I don't know what's going to happen. You know, something's going to happen.
Right.
And I don't think that I would have disliked them getting together. Like, I think it would be it'd be a totally different movie, obviously. But like, I think it would have been an interesting journey to watch, you know?
Sure.
Anyway. But we are where we are. But no, it's so reminiscent of like when I was in high school and you'd have like the locker room, like, are you looking at me? And then extremely derogative words. And it's like, no one was looking at you until you said, are you looking at me loudly? And then they looked because they heard a noise, not because they're interested in what you're bringing to the locker room. You know, and then it was like a reason to attack somebody because he's trying to touch me or whatever. Yeah. And I feel like this is the Lighthouse like hits that same note of that whole fear of, well, what if I'm having these thoughts, or what does that make me, you know? And I don't know. I think it's very well done, but I think it also really taps into that like 15-year-old fear. You know what I mean?
Which is what it always comes down to with that kind of that kind of toxic masculinity is it's always, you know, that age. You always go back to that age. And exactly like you said, like, are you looking at me? Are you going to touch me? Oh, what are you going to do? Like all that high school stuff. It's exactly how this movie feels most of the time.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's just remarkable how much progress has been made in, I would just say within the last 5 to 10 years, right? If you look at the way social media is now that you have the world becomes smaller because of the technology that's available, to where you're starting to understand, if you're open-minded, you start to understand that there's more out there in the world than wherever you are. And there are often a lot more people that are going to be a lot more accepting and understanding of you as opposed to, let's just say you live in small town America. And sorry for anybody who's listening to this from small town America. You typically have a little bit more conservative leaning, not necessarily, you know, with a political party or anything like that, but a little bit more conservative leaning when it comes to in comparison to, you know, someplace like Manhattan or DC or parts of Atlanta, to where that same pressure is not going to be there. And especially for someone, if you're getting out of high school and you leave that little community or that petri dish, that wonderful experiment that high school is, and you go to college where you're meeting more people that are from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, having different life experiences, and you find and gravitate to those people that are more like you. And you get to understand that there's a lot more out there in the world to where the shit that you went through at home doesn't matter. The rest of the world is not like that. And I think at least what we see as far as the changes from the time period that this film is made and then the time period now is that even the concept of masculinity has changed drastically to the point where we would not even argue that those men can own the license to call themselves men and men alone. right? Because so much has changed since then that we now apply to that term to where it's not very rigid. Now it's very wide and expansive. Because when I was in high school, a guy painting his nails, it was a violation of dress code because some stupid bullshit reason, right? Now I'm seeing men my age, older, who are, I think the term is cis, that fuck it, I'm going to wear nail polish. You know why? Because I have a daughter. My daughter painted my nails, and she wanted to paint my nails. Yep. Fuck you if you don't like it.
Oh yeah.
Or you have musicians running around it's like, I'm a rock star. I get to do what the fuck I want. And you start to see that freedom that comes there. And, I love that aspect of it, at least the way the world has changed and how definitions have changed.
Totally. I've absolutely been in that same situation. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and she paints my nails all the time. And I'll just leave it for, days, whatever. I'll go to the gym with rainbow colored fingernails. For most people, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in a similar position. I have a 6-year-old, and she does my makeup and my nails and whatever else, and she thinks it's really funny I don't have hair to do. She told me that saves time. So
just no glitter, right? That's why I draw the line at glitter, because it's never coming off. It's never going to leave my skin.
Glitter is evil.
Yeah.
Say it's just like sand. It's you think you've gotten rid of it, and then you realize it just keeps showing up everywhere. You never lose.
I woke up once with it on my eyelids. Like she did it on while I was asleep, and I woke up with glitter, and I was like, well, this is never coming off. I just have glitter in my eyes forever now.
And here we thought that sparkle in your eyes was just a happiness, but it's glitter. That's cool.
It's frustration.
I want to go back to something I said earlier. I said that it would have been fascinating to watch them get together, but as I'm sitting here, Thomas is a very gaslighting individual. He's not a good match. I don't want to see them get together. Ephraim deserves better than that. This guy lies about how his leg got hurt, changes the story, chases a dude with an axe, and then he's like, why were you chasing me with an axe? This is not a good relationship. I withdraw what I said earlier.
That's what makes me wonder the whole time, and when we started the discussion with, what's real? And it's there's so much deception throughout this movie. He's constantly lying to Ephraim, but then at the same time, Ephraim's like trying to unlock all the cabinets, trying to find the keys, trying to get to the light. They're just dishonest with each other the whole time.
Yeah. He's lying to you, but maybe there's a good reason.
Right.
We talked about the aspect ratio of the film earlier, and how that made things a little bit more cramped or compact, or even a little bit more unsettling. But I think one thing that made me comfortable with this film, which honestly at first, when this film first came out, I think a year or two ago, I first thought, I'm like, oh God, I don't want to see a fucking, black and white movie with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. And it's going to be on a lighthouse. So I looked at the synopsis and I'm like, all right, well, I'll give this a shot. And I put it on my queue, and I never got around to it. So when I finally watched it, the black and white choice was outstanding.
Yeah.
One, because it gets rid of the distraction of, and I'm sorry to pick on you, James, for being an English major, but it gets rid of that distraction of, wait a second, the guy's eyes were blue, and that possibly symbolizes X. Or, this one seagull had the eye that survived was this color. It only had one leg, So you start thinking like, okay, its feet were red instead of black, So you start going away from that. Now you look at it as, I'm just looking for the bare bones story. I'm looking for what's going on here. And what's really creepy to me, and I don't know if the two of you saw this, but when you see the light from the lighthouse, I know it was white in the film because, they stayed with monochrome, but I felt as though it was yellow. When they finally got to that spot and he opened it up, I feel as though it was, even though everything was still black and white, I felt as though the light was yellow. So it gives you a chance to fill in the palette, is what I'm saying. So there's these moments in the film where I can imagine what the mermaid's fins and everything look like, right? But I don't need to see that to for me to understand the story, because the story is about these two men, or maybe this one man in the lighthouse going crazy. And it just simplifies the story so much for me. And it's, I mean, there's some visually stunning shots that I think work so well in black and white as opposed to if they had done it in color.
I could see that.
I agree. I don't think I would want to see this in color. I think it would remove so much from it. I think it also makes it feel more isolating and singular to the story, because it's you know, it's so rare that you see a movie that's only in black and white, that it makes it feel like, as you're watching it, this is their world, this is their thing. It's different, it's theirs, and it makes it feel more lonely, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with all that, but I didn't notice that. I thought it was yellow, but you're right, I did. Did you have that too, Brandon, or not?
I don't know if I thought it was yellow. I was more just taken, like, I was just surprised at how crazy the actual light itself looked. I was trying to figure out, like, it looks so hypnotic when they're up close to it, that I was trying to read into that. I was like, maybe he's just hypnotized by this thing. I didn't really think yellow.
No, I like the just hypnotized by it. I think that definitely comes across. Like, once he's up there, like, he does not look like he's in this world at all. So
I've never seen a lighthouse light before. I don't know if that's how they all look, but it looks insane. There are so many weird angles and, you know, cuts in that structure that it looks really cool. Like, I can see why he was so into it.
I was just like, are you blind now? Like, I can't imagine looking into that thing. These are the things I think about.
Whoa, that is crazy bright.
Way too bright, buddy. What are you doing? Jeez.
When he's at the light, that's when we see the tentacle. What did you make of the tentacles?
I don't know. It was like so out of nowhere. It was weird. It was like weird. But then, like, I don't want to say I'm a Lovecraft person fan, but Lovecraft's writing, you know, the Lovecraftian fan in me was like, I want more of that. Like, I want some crazy fucking shit out there, like, other than just the mermaid. Like it didn't have to go total cosmic, but, like, I don't know, maybe a kraken shows up, or, you know, something. Like, I wanted something else, but it was just weird to me that it felt like a one shot. Like,
I mean, they make that reference early on. Willem Dafoe's character makes reference to Triton and Neptune. So, you know, maybe throwing that out there, it's this idea of, I don't know, as far as what seafarers and sailors, you know, having to battle Neptune. I mean, because you got this raging storm outside. So, I mean, not the part where when Willem Dafoe is up in the lighthouse, but later on when, you know, they're having this fight and Robert Pattinson's character just beats the shit out of him, and he reappears as you know, with all these barnacles and seashells and stuff on him.
The only thing with the light is when Ephraim does make it to the light, he, like, screams and then shouldn't fall on the stairs, and then he's being eaten alive by seagulls. Like, I don't know if we're meant to know, like, does he just die from falling down the stairs, or I guess he's just, you know, hurt so badly that he just lays there as he's being eaten apart, or was it, like, I don't know, that whole point of him finally reaching the light and then falling and then dying, I don't know what you guys read into that. It's just like his mission was accomplished, he made it to the light, and then that's it.
Again, I'm still trying to figure it out myself as far as what it exactly meant for him and what he exactly saw. Like, you know, could you also make that the light is him dying? You know, he didn't go up to light, because at the end, and maybe it was me, at the end, there's no fucking lighthouse. You can't see a lighthouse from where he is.
Oh, it's a good point. Yeah, he's just on the rocks. So
was he, you know, shipwrecked and landed on the beach and on the rocks and died? Because that was one of the other notes. I was like, if he's fucking dead this whole time, I'm gonna be mad. And my wife looked at me, rolled her eyes, and just walked out. I'm like, because it was the end of the film. I'm like maybe he was dead the whole time.
Lighthouse. And he's naked. Like, he's fully clothed when he's up in the lighthouse, and then he's just naked and being eaten alive. So maybe none of it ever happened. Or that was his life flashing before his eyes before he dies.
Well, there's been cases of lighthouses being used symbolically as death. So, I mean, that all makes a lot of sense. And if you broke it down as salvation, like you could literally have this all being his soul being judged sort of thing. Like,
Okay.
you know, he's trying to climb the ladder to get to the light, and instead he falls. I don't know. I'm just throwing out random shit now. So there you go.
I did wonder, maybe, I mean, no, there could be an afterlife thing. It could be like a purgatory, because he's clearly being picked apart by seagulls, but he's not dead. He's still breathing. So I wonder if he's just trapped in this kind of limbo state.
Yeah, and he's just stuck there.
Yeah.
I like that.
There's just certain parts I think you can kind of mull over, you know, forever and not really ever come to any kind of conclusion, which is, I think that's what's cool about it. No, there's no definite answers, but I think we covered everything I've got.
Cool. This is the part where we say, if people liked this, what else should they watch? So, Brandon, would you like to go first?
I'll take the easy answer, and I'll say The Witch. I think it goes hand in hand with it, but it's also, this movie was hard to watch for a lot of reasons, but I think The Witch is harder to watch for other reasons without getting too into that movie. But if you've got a strong stomach, go watch The Witch.
Cool. And since we all know Don will drop 87 of these, I'm going to once again do my double feature answer instead. So I think a great double feature for this film would be The Shining. I think they're both psychological breakdowns, isolation, manliness, and that feeling that you're not living up to what you should be, basically. And I think they'd be wonderful together. All right, you're up, man.
All right. First off, The Little Mermaid. So we're going to go there. Followed by Splash. So we'll make it a triple feature.
Noticing a theme.
Jaws would definitely be on there. I put The Fog on there as well. Let's see. Hereditary, Midsummer, 1922 would be another good one. Psychological horror. There Will Be Blood.
At the Daniel Day-Lewis time.
And last but not least, I actually scratched off a few other ones because I'm like, The Birds with Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh man, that'd be a good double feature as well. I'll give you that. Yeah.
Oh man, I love The Birds.
Man,
I saw The Birds when I was like 13 years old, and it scared the absolute shit out of me.
I don't know why. Of birds.
Yeah, like if I remember seeing that like in my friend's basement. Like I don't know why 13-year-old kids in like the year 2000 decided to watch The Birds, but we did. And, it scared the hell out of me.
That's awesome. No, I've been scared of birds my entire life since I was like 5, so I put off watching it forever. And I saw pieces of it here and there, but I think I finally saw the whole thing maybe 2 years ago. And there were parts where the birds were just like pecking at shit, and it re-terrified the shit out of me. And maybe that's why I wrote The Cassowary, huh, Don? Was it something pulling in there? All right. Well, let's bring it back to you, Brandon. Where can people find you online and follow your stuff?
On Twitter, I'm at Wondrous Sound. On Instagram, I'm at Brandon Boone Music. Trying to think of things I can promote that are coming up. Obviously, the No Sleep podcast. We're nearing the end of our 16th season. And we just started to do, speaking of Gemma more earlier, we are doing our version of Dear Laura that she adapted for the show. And that actually, the first chapter aired today. And I really hope people enjoy that. It's probably the most closely I've worked with an author as far as the music goes, because I really wanted to make sure that, you know, I'm capturing her characters correctly. And so No Sleep podcast. If you want to check out a video game that I wrote music for, Scarlet Hollow is on Steam, and it's getting some pretty good reviews. Yeah, so check those out.
Very awesome. Yeah, Dear Laura is a book that I read before I knew Gemma pretty well, and it blew me away. So I saw her post that it was coming, and I didn't know if it was out yet, but I'm definitely going to check that out, because adding the music and the voices and different stuff, that's going to be really, really cool. So everybody should check that out.
Yeah, on that topic, I don't read a lot of books. It's like an ongoing joke. I'm dumb, et cetera, et cetera. And I read Dear Laura in 2020 when we were touring Europe. And it just like the second I put that book down, I went to David and I was like, we need to do this on the show. And it's finally happened. And I'm so excited. And
that's really cool.
I think X's theme song is some of my favorite music that I've written. It's very eerie. I don't know. I'm really excited. I hope people like it.
That's fantastic. I don't know. I love when we want to do something, and even if it takes a long time, like when it comes to fruition, it's such a cool feeling. So that's great. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right, man. We will quit taking up your time, and we will wrap it up for this week. So as always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Donald Guillory, or am I actually James? And it's James me.
Ooh, can I be Ephraim?
Yes. Yes, you can. I would like to be the seagull. All right. We'll see you next week here at the Necronomid.com.
I did add some voices to it though when I was watching it, which was again. I just imagine the seagull sitting there. It's like, yeah, you want to fuck up our friend? We're gonna fuck you up.
It's the good feathers from Animaniacs.
Yes.